Morning. Assalamualaikum Pak Kum. Kita mau di Zoom.
Good morning, Bapak Jeffrey.
Selamat pagi juga.
Selamat pagi Pak Jeffrey.
Selamat
Morning.
pagi.
Hello, how are you?
Hey, good to see you.
Good to see
Selamat
you.
pagi.
How are you? Is everything good?
I'm doing well. It's
Thank you.
the weather is getting better in Auckland. It's a lot better than when Pat Agung was here. It was not such good weather, I don't think. But it's getting much better, thankfully. How are you? Everything well in Malang?
Yes.
Yeah,
That's better.
very well.
Bagaimana cuacanya? Agak panas sedikit kemungkinan.
Yeah.
Musim ini
You're right. You're right.
musim panas.
Quite hot.
Musim hujan.
Oh, musim hujan. Yeah, this time of year in Indonesia is not the best weather, I must say.
Yeah.
But I will be in Indonesia
On
in
November?
November. Yeah, November.
Yes.
Yeah. Looking forward to it.
Okay.
I have to
Going to
apologize
Malang
today.
as well?
I was hoping to, but I've got to come right back to New Zealand for graduation ceremony.
No.
Okay.
So unfortunately not. I need to apologize. My voice is, I've been talking too much. My voice is very tired, I think.
You
But I will.
sound great, Pak Jeffrey.
That sound okay. Good. Maybe not in an hour from now. But I've got some water, so I'll be okay.
Okay, maybe we can start, Pak Swasta.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Waiting Bu Caci? Bu
Bu Caci is already joining.
I'm here.
Okay.
Oh, with Pak.
Okay. Give spotlight to Bu Caci, please. All right.
Okay.
Okay, go on, Mbak Hifni.
Alright. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the 3-in-1 program held by the Magister of Business Administration, Faculty of Administration Science, Brawijaya University. Honorable Ibu Caci Rudamayanti, as Emprov ACC DBA, as a Head of Department of Business Administration. Bapak Agung Nugroho Lutfi Iman Fahrudi, SAB Embusage Pro PhD, as a Secretary of Department of Business Administration. Professor Andriani Kusumawati, SOS MSc DBA, as a Head of Magister of Business Administration. Bapak Swasta Priyambada, SOS MAB PhD, as a Secretary of Magister of Business Administration. And our special guest, Dr. Jeffrey Stell, BA, MBA, PhD, CFA. Before we start our agenda today, let me introduce myself. My name is Hifni Bahira Hurwaida from the Magister of Business Administration. As the Master of Ceremony, let me read out the rundown that will take place over the next few hours. First agenda is opening. Second is speech from our Head of Department of Business Administration. Third is our main agenda, 3-in-1 by MAB. And the last is closing. Before we begin the agenda, let's take a moment to pray together according to each of our own beliefs and faiths. Prayer begins. Thank you. Next, we will have the welcoming speech from the head of the Business Administration Department, which will be presented by Ibu Caci Rudamayanti, SOS Emprov ACC DBA. To Ibu Caci Rudamayanti, time is yours.
Okay. Thank you, Mbak Hifni. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Or good afternoon in the Auckland, I think. The Honorable Head of Study Program, Professor Andriani Kusumawati, and then the Secretary of the Study Program, Bapak Swasta Priyambada, and also Bapak Agung Fahrudi as the Secretary of Business Administration Department. And for sure, our special guest, Bapak Jeffrey Stengel from Massey University. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your willingness to share your experience to our students. And also for students here from Master of Business Administration students. For today, we will have a 3-in-1 program for these study programs, and this program is a regular program that conducted by our faculty for all of the study program, especially for Master of Business Administration. For this 3-in-1 programs, we invite 3 components or elements of lectures to participate to teach in one class. The first, the students will have the internal lecture from our university, the expert from our university, and also the second, the students will have knowledge from the expertise from overseas. And today we will have Dr. Jeffrey at the moment. And then last week, if I'm not mistaken, last week or 2 weeks 2 weeks ago, MBA students also having a practitioner to be a keynote speaker in the fintechs and also for the investment topic as well. So this is a great time for students to gain knowledge from different perspectives, not only from Indonesian perspective, but also from overseas perspective. So for students, this is your best time to improve and enhance your knowledge instead of the in terms of fintech and green innovations. And then especially for this topic, fintech and green innovation, redefining financial ecosystem for sustainability. This is a very interesting topic because consider as a business community, we are not only talking about profit, but we also talking about 2 different perspectives, which is people and also planet from triple bottom line theories. So based on this theory, you will get the business sustainability if you are consider about these 3 elements. So for students, this is a very, very interesting topic, and this is very important topic for you, not only in the finance issues, but also for the sustainability issues, which is very important at the moment in Indonesia and also for global perspective. So this is your time to discuss, asking more questions, and then don't be shy to be more active, yeah, in this event. And also for the committee, thank you so much for your hard worker, yeah, for her hard work to make this event come true. So once again, thank you, not only for the Dr. Jeffrey, thank you so much for your time, and then all of the committee and students, enjoy your time and enjoy the 3-in-1 program, Master of Business Administrations. Thank you so much, and Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you to Ibu Caci Rudamayanti, Assos Improv SCC DBA, for the welcoming speech. Next, before we start the main agenda, let's take a picture together. To all the audiences, please turn on the camera so our team can see all of you and take the screenshots. To all the audiences, you can use our virtual background. Okay, we can start to take a picture. Okay. 1, 2, and 3. Okay, the next slide. 1, 2, and 3. Okay, thank you. Before we start our main agenda, we'd like to remind all participants to stay with us until the end of the agenda because the attendance link will be shared afterwards. Now we're heading to the main agenda, 3-in-1 by Magister of Business Administration. In this agenda, we will have Bapak Swasta Priyambada Assos MAB PhD as a moderator. He is a lecturer from the Business Administration Department at Brawijaya University, who also serves as the Secretary of the Magister of Business Administration. He previously held the position of Coordinator of Information Systems and Public Relations, or PSIK, at the Faculty of Administrative Science, Brawijaya University. In addition to her academic career, he has been actively involved in various social activities and is also a contributor to Kompas ID's opinion section, as well as Kompas Leaders Letters. Her writings mainly focus on safety management, aquatic safety, and road safety. Please welcome our moderator, Bapak Swasta Priyambada Esos MAB PhD. Time is yours.
Thank you, MC Hipni, and good morning, everyone. Good morning, Dr. Jeffrey Stangl. Good morning, Professor Andriani and Bu Caci. Now, we are in the meeting to discuss about financial technology and green innovation. But before this, let me introduce our speaker today, my teacher, my good friend from New Zealand, Dr. Jeffrey Stangl, MBA, PhD, BA, CEA, is academic and executive education with strong expertise in financial. So he has PhD in finance, and MBA in USA, and also BA, I think in 1991, right, Dr. Jeffrey, yeah, in University of California. So he had professional experience, in 2018 until now as Associate Dean International, and now the Director of Executive and Senior Lecturer in Finance. He's also has a research interest as financial literacy, investor behavior, and governance. And also he has many publications in Journal of Management and Education. And now he is also a chairman of CFA. I think it's about financial, Dr. Jeffrey. CFA Society in New Zealand, and also the co-founder of Financial Education Research Center. And he has award and recognition as an excellence in executive education in CFA recognition in 2017. And now, currently, Dr. Jeffrey is Associate Dean International of MAB Business School, as well as Executive Education and Director of MAB Executive Development, as well as Associate Dean of Strategic Partnership. So we have a partnership MBA UP with MAB University now. Dr. Jeffrey, I think it's enough. It's a long journey, and time is yours, please.
Thank you, Pak Swasta, my dear friend. Thank you for your introduction. My challenge now will be to wake up the students after you put them to sleep with too many accolades. But thank you. You're very, very kind. Ibu Damayanti, thank you for your leadership and for helping to pull this event together today. Ibu Kusumawati, nice to see you again. Pak Agung, I can't see on the screen. Maybe he's there somewhere. But it has very much been a pleasure working together, and I'm hopeful to share some potentially new insights with you today on the topic. I should be sharing the screen, I suspect, shouldn't I? That would be helpful. On sharing the screen. Here we go. Ta-da. How's that? Can you see that okay? Yep. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so fintech and green innovation. I think, as Ibu Damayanti has said, that we've come a long way with fintech, with social responsible investing, with a lot of different developments in the financial services sector beyond the single bottom line. And as Ibu Damayanti correctly said, it's about people, it's about communities, it's about the environment, and it's about using finance and financial resources to the betterment of all people, where we are all combined together in a very important ecosystem that is also a very fragile ecosystem. And particularly if you think in Indonesia, and there's many other examples, Indonesia is one of the largest countries in the world, and there are many segments of the Indonesian population that remain unbanked, that don't have access to capital, that aren't able to provide electricity for their homes because they don't have microfinance, who are unable to live life to their fullest potential because, in fact, the financial system isn't always working. It's not working necessarily to the betterment of communities or all individuals, to include all individuals, and to the betterment of the environment, which we know they're all linked together. And that's what's important, I believe, about this topic, redefining the financial ecosystem for sustainability that links all the disparate aspects of a very complex ecosystem together. Now, when I speak to my students, I always like to start out with, the WIFM question. You probably have heard of WIFM, or you should heard of WIFM. It's a good English language kind of phrase, WIFM. What's in it for me? Like, what's in it for you students? Why should you listen or be concerned about anything that I'll be speaking about in the next wee while? Well, there's several reasons. Number one, as I've said, we're all connected to one ecosystem. So whether you're, a finance practitioner or you're just a financial user of capital, it's of benefit to you to understand how the system works and how the system can work better. For those of you who are considering careers in finance, there's definitely a lot in it for you, in terms of being a professional in helping to develop what is really just a very big word, nascent, a very new sort of ecosystem that to a large extent is still in its infancy, that is still in a baby state. And you, this next generation, of your master's students, you're going into careers, if you specialize in some of these areas of this financial ecosystem we'll talk about today, that's where the opportunities are going to be. That's where you'll find the good careers. You won't find great careers. There are careers certainly in banking or financial intermediation, but those are more limited and of less potential than some of these areas that we'll talk about today, okay? So the first thing I'll do is to set the stage a little bit. We'll talk about sort of the kind of macro situation, where we're at, kind of where we've come from historically. What are some of the new channels to develop fintech further, applications of fintech? What are some of the opportunities and needs for increased inclusion, building capability? Financial capability is certainly a pet project of mine, because even here in New Zealand, a developed country, there are large portions of our society who are ill-educated, who are not banked, who are making bad financial decisions, who are finding themselves in a hole that just keeps getting deeper and deeper, a financial hole. So building inclusion and capability, investment management, we've talked about, or that was referenced earlier, investment management, ESG, sort of financial management is a big area. And then we'll just kind of close off with some case studies and some potential challenges and strategically where we're going with all this. And hopefully at the very end, because the richness out of these types of discussions and forums is really in the Q&A. That's where the good part is. So this by way of an introduction, there are already great examples of successful sort of innovative fintech green solutions to help empower Kenyan households who have been able, it's over 1 million Kenyan households now, who have been able to provide electricity, wind turbine electricity and solar electricity for their homes. So where they're not burning kerosene, and using kerosene as a resource, where they're able to have access to micro credentials, microfinance, to help pay for, basic sort of what we would consider to be standards of living, to have access to electricity. Of course, there would be many, areas of Indonesia that still don't have a reliable electricity who would benefit from, something like this, where you have solar or wind powered energy. It's pretty commonsensical, actually, that there's so many needs out there. It's just directing the capital resources to where they're best used and to where they're most needed. That's what's important. Okay, so we like to say in finance, I'm a professor of finance, we like to say that we teach our students that markets are efficient. But are they really? I mean, that's a question. Are markets, capital markets, efficient? And there's a lot of evidence to say no, they're not, because there's still capital flows going towards the immediate bottom line, the single bottom line, without directing capital to where it really needs to be. So to a large extent, capital markets are not efficient because the money isn't going where it is most needed in many, many cases. And you've probably heard, I talk about it, finance is the blood of any organization. It's what keeps organizations alive. It's what keeps economies alive. It's what keeps countries alive. But it's not efficient. It's like a heart doesn't have the right rhythm. And fintech, which circumvents, some of the traditional financial intermediation, allows for more free-flowing financial, access to capital that will reach the communities, to the people, that will help to drive sustainability, that will help to build resilience in financial systems and communities, and that will provide inclusivity to many, many people who are underbanked, who are unbanked, who don't actually have access, the requisite access to capital. This is what we're talking about. And I think this is all very, very, critical to understand the need for linking financial resources through sustainable fintech solutions to a broader ecosystem. So if we look here, we see, kind of the macro sense of the challenge. It's said by, International Monetary Fund that there is a $3 trillion US dollar gap to adequately fund some of these sustainable projects that are necessary for all of us, in the next 5-6 years. Energy is going to require $200 to $300 billion, $2 trillion to meet decarbonization 2030 decarbonization targets, so we don't continue to pollute the environment, so we don't continue to pump carbon emissions, and we all know how much damage that's doing to, the environment. We have, climate adaptation, converting to electric vehicles. That's very, very important. We have, conservation efforts to preserve, things you never even think of, like in New Zealand. New Zealand is very much an agricultural country, and, nature conservation, planting forests, preserving grasslands, modernizing the dairy herd so they're not polluting the rivers. These are all very important and expensive areas that sustainable finance is going to need to fill the gap. Because if you look, at where we're at now, the global economic emissions and what losses that creates, through carbon emissions and so forth. So there's a big gap and there's a huge challenge. And the rough estimate is right now, if you look at, transportation, energy, water, a lot of communities don't have access to clean water. Urban development, right now the available existing infrastructure is only covering a third of what's needed to adequately develop those sectors. So my math is correct. What that means is that 2/3 of these areas need investment to become sustainable, right? So that's by 2030 to generate this $3 trillion gap. And then if you look at, well, what's the downside of that? What's the downside of capital markets not being efficient? And the downside is with these short-termism, single bottom line horizons, that, the failures, short-term market failures, the failure risk is enormous. So that's what ESG investing is about, is identifying, these companies that a lot of investment managers are no longer putting money into carbon emitting companies because they're not sufficiently adapting to solar power, to wind generation, to geothermal, right? In New Zealand, there's huge amounts of monies going into, these alternative energy sources. So there's a big opportunity. So if you think about your careers, the WIFM, if you align yourself as students, align your careers to be experts in these areas, that's going to be a huge opportunity for you, okay? So, bit of background, 1970s through 2023, we started off with, single bottom line, really, socially responsible investing, which fundamentally comes down to divesting, as it were, in sin stocks, in gambling stocks, and tobacco stocks, in armament stocks, and alcohol stocks, these sorts of things. That's not a positive. That's not a positive filter. That's what's called a negative filter. And what that means is you're precluding investments that have a potential negative impact, making bombs, okay? But that's not a view to the future. You want to have a positive outlook on what we can do as a community and as finance practitioners to develop, alternative energy resources, to invest in electric vehicles, to invest in reforestation, to limit polluting industries. That's what's called a positive filter. But around the 2000s, and it's still very, very popular course, is environmental social governance, or ESG investing criteria. Right now, there's all kinds of new standards that are being developed for investment managers to adequately define the risks, the ESG risks, and to compensate through valuation, taking into account the risks and the financial risk. So ESG investment, ESG financial management is very, 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 very important. green bonds, green bonds are bonds that have, a triple bottom line. Usually, where they're not just looking at a financial return, but green bonds embed in them a societal return. So green bonds, the most common original ones, were developing new prisons, for example, new Panjara, that the private company would build a new prison, but then it would be generating extra bonuses for, rehabilitating the prisoners so they didn't keep coming back to prison. And that was where they got their return from. But even though green bonds have been around now for 17 years, it's still a very small market. It's a very small market. I was involved in an attempt to launch green bonds in New Zealand through the government, and it was an absolute failure because the market simply wasn't big enough. Paris Agreement, we know all about that with global climate accords, which had a financial element into that. But as we speak, we're going back in time now, because as of 2 weeks ago, the Paris, global climate accords are being challenged. They're not being funded by governments. They're not being necessarily funded by some Western countries. So that's disappointing. This synchronization, what it says here is U.S. or EU taxonomy. It's if countries don't work together, like through the Paris Global Climate Accord, they're working it against each other. So we have to work together, and that's a development that's ongoing. Where countries adopt the same standards, and then of course the introduction of sustainability standards, which is happening. It's definitely happening, and that's an area that you students will want to get involved in, and becoming an expert in ISSB standards, being an expert within an organization, making sure your organization or your company adheres to these sustainability standards. That's an opportunity. That's where the future is going. That's where sustainable financial solutions are going. And I mentioned before, the idea of Kenyan, but there's all kinds of examples already, and I don't have any from Indonesia. I apologize for that. I'm sure there are some good examples similar to the India UPI, which is simple, technology. It's a unified payments interface that allows for, internet banking and digital transfer of funds, which is, you're in Indonesia, you're used to it with, even if you think of like Grab or something like that, GoCheck and all that, it's the same idea where you have immediate access, for financial payments, which is very, very inexpensive, rather than going through, say, a credit card or something like that historically. But it's been very, 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 very important in India, reducing the overhead costs, the intermediation costs. A lot of fraud has been reduced as a consequence, and it has gone on to empower many, many millions of people to have some access to capital. That's important. I mean, we take for granted, you guys all, I'm sure, in Malang and, where your families come from, you probably all have pretty reasonable access to banking, but that's not always the case. I think the quote is something like 70% or so of the world is not adequately banked, so it's a large area. So agri-fintech, which is payments, for banks who could monitor the productivity, the resource utilization of farms to make sure that farmers, here in New Zealand, a lot of the farms are very, very high tech, and the banks are looking, for assurances of their funding a farm, providing capital at good discounted rates. They want to make sure that the farms are using, fertilizers correctly, using water correctly. They're getting good yields in their crops. It enables what's called precise agriculture and, in turn, agricultural financing. So it provides farmers with greater access. And that's agri-fintech and Internet of all things. Like in New Zealand, IoT on farms is huge, absolutely huge. There's, the farmers of New Zealand are very, very, very high tech. Even cattle farms, they've all got, little, emitters on all the cattle to track their productivity and different aspects, that measure performance. So that's a very much, these are two very solid sort of areas, followed by some other areas. Blockchain, of course, you're all familiar with Bitcoin, which is blockchain, but blockchain is the underlying, kind of foundation for cryptocurrencies. But blockchain is more accurately described as a decentralized ledger system. And what decentralized ledger system means, that validation and confirmation is achieved by, balancing out thousands of ledgers around the world, as opposed to a financial intermediary who keeps a central set of books. So it provides greater access to capital. It provides greater transparency. It facilitates, global access to capital, carbon markets, where you can have very small scale carbon markets, through sort of blockchain solutions that can validate, carbon ematters, carbon users, and carbon providers. So in Bangladesh, for example, they have, a very efficient carbon market that is driven fundamentally, the backbone of it is blockchain technologies. We've talked about ESG, so what's the opportunity in further developing ESG? We've seen that ESG, unfortunately, can be misused. And while certain companies may be claiming ESG adherence, it's difficult to validate. So it's difficult to properly analyze on a real-time basis. But through the introduction of AI and AI modeling, ESG disclosures are able to be updated in real time. And that's important because it automatically identifies sustainability risks and improving accuracy and so forth. But it provides opportunities, for people for organizations who are really, legitimately adhering to ESG guidelines, and to reward them. So if you have greater adoption of fintech solutions that embed ESG analysis and validation through AI analysis, it's going to be a great benefit to society. You'll be able to do enhanced scenario modeling, that will help to kind of, play out all possible scenarios, from ESG. That's important. That's critical. So, there's already been a lot of innovations: decentralized finance, regenerative finance, that looks to retrofit, normal traditional financial models, and able to further build resilience into, climate change and social imbalances and all of this. So we're moving in the right direction, with such things as smart contracts that lenders of capital are able to monitor through smart agreements that validate, we talked about, with ESG validation, so forth, that it's able, all of these different innovations have added to the transparency, because, through the distributed ledger systems, you're not dependent on one source of truth, but you have multiple sources of truths, and all of that helps to, we talked, at the onset about building this ecosystem. You have to have an integration, that connects all the pieces together, and that's where we're at right now. We're looking, with greater automation, greater source of data, greater analysis of data that is already, as we speak, being adopted into transforming capital decision-making, budget allocations, that is being used to transform, financial flows to get the monies to where they should be better used, to channel monies through, to break that $3 trillion barrier that we're faced with over the next 6 years. So these are all really important innovations, but we have a long way to go. And, particularly this idea of financial inclusion and building financial capability. I think, this global unbanked, challenge, as it were, to think of the 1.4 billion adults globally, 1.4 billion. To put that into context, the population of China is 1.4 billion. The population of India, 1.4 billion. So basically, either the whole population of China or India don't have access to capital. They aren't able to save their money to generate returns through investment. They aren't able to manage the risks, and able to grow and develop their livelihoods through such simple things as, access to capital to pay for, micro investments in solar or wind energy. That's important. This global system for global communications shows that women in particular benefit, through the adoption of digital wallets without having to have a bag full of cash, and we think back. I mean, we all now are used to using our phone app, for everything. But that's only 7 or so years old that we had smartphones. In 2007, actually, not 7, 2007. So already 18 years old. But, that's made a huge difference. I mean, I remember when I lived in Indonesia. When I was in Indonesia, there were very few ATMs in the early 1990s. Everyone still paid for everything with big bags of cash, right? And you think about how far we've come, but think about how far we have to go with 1.4 billion adults still underserved, by the financial community. So that's your challenge. Your challenge is to help to spread financial inclusion, and in doing so, making markets more efficient, providing greater access. And once we, as a community, provide greater financial access, communities grow, they prosper, and we all benefit. And that's an important consideration, this allocation of resources, efficient, right? But, we just have so far to go. And while, we've made a lot of progress, and we are making huge steps forward. I mean, if you think of the recent years, but, GSMA is projecting that, in another 4 years, 2 years now, 2 or 3 years, that will increase the global penetration of, finance, digital finance or resources to 7% of the world. But that still leaves a huge gap. And I think in your case, in my case, I can't remember the last time I went to the bank. Who uses banks anymore? But think of all the people who have access to neither, which is quite scary. Okay, so we'll next move on just to looking at investment management, which is my area specifically. ESG ratings, and I must say I'm pretty familiar with financial services overall. There still is, unfortunately, a lot of dodgy, what we call dodgy,
Yes. I'm sorry.
unsavory activities.
Yeah,
Uh,
Dr. Jeffrey. Yes. Sorry, I'm sorry to disturb a moment. Maybe your share screen is gone, so you can share again. I mean,
Oh, what something happened? Oh, wow.
it's
Oh,
okay.
okay.
That's yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Mhm.
Sorry about that. I don't know what
That's
happened.
okay. That's okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so now
Lovely.
investment
Thank you.
manager. We're all good. Sorry about that. I don't know what happened there.
That's
Okay, so now we have investment management, and I was saying that, ESG profiles or ratings can vary substantially. And again, there's a lot of dodgy business going on where people are inflating. It's called greenwashing. I think most of you will have heard of greenwashing. So it's greenwashing, claiming ESG compliance when in fact it's a falsity, and getting a better rating by claiming ESG compliance, which is dishonest, but it happens. And through smart contracts, through the adoption of AI in analyzing ESG compliance is going to have huge benefits. And then once investment managers are able to correctly identify ESG compliance, and in turn, because what happens now is, you're looking for what's called an alpha, the extra return to an investment in ESG. And it's hard to measure the extra return generated through ESG style investing compliance because there's a lot of funny business going on. So if we have a better measure of ESG compliance, then there will be greater validation of the role that ESG investments play in an investment manager's portfolio in generating returns. So therefore, there will be more monies flowing into ESG. So it's kind of the carry-on effect, right? So that's what's happening, and it's already taken place, with the European Bank of England, et cetera, where they are actually doing a lot of stress testing on, ESG compliance and other areas. Investment management, another slide we've talked about in passing, or I have just spoken about, carbon markets. How do we trade carbon credits? So if there was a more fluid market, we have a carbon market in New Zealand. I'm guessing you do in Indonesia, although I don't have familiarity with it. But all of these sort of fintech solutions will help us to have greater transparency in developing further carbon markets, which of course has an obvious impact, right? So we've got that. We've got building finance, bridging finance, and allowing companies who are looking to transition from sort of traditional operations, carbon emitting operations, to more environmentally neutral or net positive sort of production. So that is another area that the fintech it will provide a green solution to helping firms through proper analysis, through proper capital flows. It will help firms transition over the next 5-6 years to 2030 to green companies. Okay, so there's a lot of different laws that are going to be coming into effect. EU, of course, is taking the leadership role. North America has gone backwards, particularly America, I would say. But EU is going to require that all asset managers, all investment managers have to fully disclose what they're financing in terms of carbon emitters, right? So that's going to create a big shift, of potentially, globally of $40 trillion towards green investment through validated, bona fide, legitimate, green investment. In all of these different areas, these different channels of investment that will be that pacemaker that I talked about at the onset, that will help to regulate and moderate and accurately distribute financial resources to the most appropriate end user to benefit all of us individually, communally, and also, environmentally. This is all very, very important. I mean, and some of these, examples are taking place right now. I mean, I start with APAC, with Grab and Gojek. Next time you book a Gojek or a Grab taxi, take a look and you'll see that there's a button on it now that you can make a contribution to carbon offsetting. So there will be a calculation. You're taking a Grab or Gojek from here to here. That's going to generate X amounts of carbon emissions. You are able to offset those carbon emissions by contributing maybe just a very, 1 rupiah, 10,000 rupiah, that will help. You take a look next time you take a Grab, you'll see, or you should see, it's on my Grab app, that you can already pay for offset carbons. You've got a new proposed Luxembourg Stock Exchange that will really help to channel into a newly developed financial market capital flows that will help us get to that 2030 sort of target. Okay, we've talked about Kenya. Kenya, with these solar and also turbine and also water development they have in Kenya as well, with over 10 million Kenyan households now have access, like you see on the screen here. Whereas before they would have been burning kerosene lamps, in their homes so they could, their children could study at night. And you think of the, kind of health implications, there, and how those families have benefited. Those 10 million households have benefited greatly. China even has, of all countries, China's actually doing quite a good job with limiting their carbon emissions through a variety of different initiatives, that have to do with their digital RMB carbon trading platforms, that has proven to be very, very effective as well. So there's a lot of bright sparks. We talked earlier about agri-fintech, agri-tech, as we call it here in New Zealand, for sustainable soybeans production. And that's going to be huge. This just as a side note. Soybeans are, China is the biggest importer. I think China imports roughly 60% of all soybeans worldwide for feed and for food production and so forth. China is, as we speak, for political reasons primarily, and to have a more stable supply chain, are shifting production of soybean from America to Brazil, to South America, and heavily investing in sustainable soybean production. That's going to be a big deal. That's a really big deal. And there will be no coming back from that. So, that's a very wise investment. So, soybean production is going to shift, is already shifting to South America by the largest importer of soybeans. Fractionalization of bonds generally, which allows, fractional access to bonds, which makes it easier for everyone to invest rather than having to invest. It's kind of like Bitcoins, right? Well, not kind of, it's exactly like Bitcoin. So the fractionalization of bond markets through fintech solutions is exactly the same as purchasing a Bitcoin, where you buy 1/10 of a Bitcoin, 100th of a Bitcoin, of a cryptocurrency, because very few people can afford to spend $80,000 for one coin. So it makes cryptocurrencies already. But through green bond fractionalization, that's going to be a very important transition as well. So future, where are we at? You know, as we move to quantum computing, that's going to be a game changer. You've hopefully heard of quantum computers. Quantum computers are 100 million times, I didn't make that number up, are 100 million times more powerful than today's computers. And they are expected to be online within, depends on who you talk to or listen to, it's within the next 5 to 15 years before they're readily available. So if we take the middle point, that'll be 10 years. And once you combine quantum computing, which has the deep synthesized and integrated analysis instead of linear sort of programming, greater synthesization, you know, that's going to open up all kinds of opportunities to marry up fintech solutions with quantum computing, power. So that's a great idea as well. We've got decentralized autonomous organizations who are pooling resources, for remittances to underbanked families, in countries like Bangladesh and so forth, that kind of avoid the traditional intermediation, I should say. Central bank digital currencies, China, the RMB, is looking at, greater access to financial assets through digital platforms, through digital currencies. The Bank of Indonesia undoubtedly will be exploring that as we speak. So, where is this heading? Bank of International Settlements sees that, we're going to be, by 2030, the tokenization, which is cryptocurrencies is a token. So the tokenization of assets will reach in the next 6 years $25 trillion. That's unheard of. That's going to result in a major shift in flows of money. Just unprecedented changes in transparency, liquidity, access to resources, to finances. In 2035, another 10 years, it's anticipated that every transaction you make will have a carbon offset. We'll tell you exactly what you're contributing to, carbon emissions, how you can offset and mitigate that. So that's really the important aspects of generating sustainability, to help us reach our economic goals, our ecological goals, social goals, which are what drive social markets. So there's a huge amount of opportunity. So you guys, you students listening to this, this is your future, honestly. If you're entertaining careers in finance, or even if not directly finance, but if you're anticipating, business careers generally, you're going to need to get your head around some of the changes and the resultant opportunities ahead. Okay, so there's challenges, regulatory frameworks, they don't align. You have America saying one thing, Europe saying something else. You have Singapore saying one thing, Indonesia saying something else. When we come up with greater accord, like through APAC accords, which there is, then governments and regulatory bodies will work together, and they can work towards common goals, whether it's, ecological goals, whether it's security, mitigating security risks. We've seen a lot of transactional, breakdowns with Bitcoin. There's been any number of examples of fraudulent behavior. But what's required is coming to a a global consensus, which is probably going to be difficult to achieve, to be fair. But it's going to be ultimately essential that we all work together. Otherwise, we're going to continue to have market disruptions. So there's opportunities and there's a lot of challenges. Challenges in the sense of enforcement of greenwashing with ESG validation. I've talked a fair bit about that. To minimize the financial losses that have exceeded over, resulted in over 1.5 billion US in fines that have been levied against, investment management firms or firms like, if you think of Mercedes-Benz, that would be considered greenwashing, the fines that they had to pay for covering over their diesel emissions, for example. You talk about, the cryptocurrency markets. There's got to be greater regulatory oversight that will prevent, future further collapses. We saw with FTX, Sam Brinkman, the collapse of FTX. I mean, that's crazy. The billions of dollars that were lost there through lack of oversight. I've already enough about sort of regulatory frameworks, that will help, to manage risks, that will help to prevent such things as, these cyber attacks in New Zealand. These cyber attacks, are in Indonesia, they'd be the same thing. People are stealing billions of dollars from innocent people and communities and businesses. You will have seen in the financial news, or might have seen, there's been several very prominent companies that have been run out of business because they've been held ransom through such things as the SolarWinds cyber attack, where they've frozen up their system. So governments need to work together, which is also part of the Fintech, sort of sustainable solution, which is having the appropriate regulatory oversights and government collaboration that will help to prevent, some of these atrocities really, from happening in the future, through such introduction. I touched on briefly the EU taxonomy, which sets a criteria, for all the governments of EU that they will agree on, setting up platforms like this UPI we've spoken about in India, or PIX in Brazil, that helps provide access to capital through digital payment infrastructure. You can be a part of that. That can be, your whole career could be, centered on digital access to financial resources, which we commonly call, in some ways, fintech. But fintech is just scratching, what we know of as fintech is just scratching the surface. Some of these other adaptions, are really much deeper. Establishing standards boards, working with your company with adopting global standards like ISSB and IOSCO. These are all important areas that you can focus on through you might be a CFO, and you might, as CFO, you might want to focus on different standards to make sure that your company is adopting the requisite standards that will help us achieve financial green sustainability. So that's your challenge, and the government's challenge is, building the infrastructure and helping firms to develop infrastructure, helping to develop solutions. It's crazy because the technology is changing so fast that the regulators can't keep up with it. In India and also here in New Zealand, the regulators have set up what is called sandboxes. And sandboxes, the governments provide access to a couple trusted firms to experiment and with different fintech products that ultimately will be adopted. But first the governments and the regulators want to see how they work, and that's a role of government to allow for these sandboxes, that can, validate and trial some of the new areas. So your call to action, what is that? For anyone looking for, careers in academia and finance, financial research, there's so many different areas, that are open to, further investigation. It's like, why is it that a lot of fintech solutions that have great promise seemingly for, innovative solutions to, solving some really complex environmental and other problems, why is it they never develop and go to scale? Why is it that they remain small? Why is it that those type of projects don't get the sort of uplift that you would have anticipated? Good finance research, topic, looking at ESG greenwashing, what can be done to better, observe, document, analyze, and validate, ESG compliance. That's a big one. Helping institutions transition from fossil fuels to sustainable production. I mean, these are all things that will impact all of us. Well, certainly you, a younger generation, right? So, we need to work with a variety of stakeholders to coordinate, not just within financial services. That's what this presentation is ostensibly about. But going back to the start of the presentation, we're talking about ecosystems. Finances, we talk about the financial ecosystem, okay? But, there's a broader ecosystem with multiple, sundry stakeholders that you as global leaders need to work with to get greater uptake and greater adoption, okay? So just the last slide is looking at, we have a lot of challenges ahead of us. There's a lot of opportunities. You're able to make a difference, I think would be my parting message to you, that you're able to make a difference. Think broadly, think about the opportunities that you will have in front of you in your careers with adopting, fintech solutions to provide sustainable green solutions. And that's what this presentation's about. And you as students, us of a different generation, we've done the damage. It's up to you to provide a solution, and it's up to you to drive forward the next generation of business leaders who have a global perspective on providing answers through financial resources to some of the issues that face us, as global citizens. So that's it for me. And now I'm looking forward to your questions.
Yes, thank you very much, Pak Jeffrey Stengel. It's very insightful and also beautiful insight to our thinking, our student that they will think about the ESG, environmental, social, and governance, and also from self-awareness of financial ecosystem until this how to be a global leader and financial and also strategical thinking of that. So, wow, a very, very important thing to that need to understand well. So guys, the students, you can ask to Professor Jeffrey Stengel. I think we have 20 minutes, right? Yes, maybe like. Thank you. Please, and also you can write in the chat, yeah? Okay. Yes? Share your hand. Maybe. Or just make a reactions. That's okay. And
I think they're all a little bit malu, Pak Swasta.
yeah, malu. Yeah, guys, you can speak a little Indonesia because Pak Jeffrey has 18 years old. Yeah, 18 years in Indonesia and Bali in 90 era. Yeah, Pak Jeffrey. So
Different time, different time.
yeah. Okay, guys. Is there any question, please?
Hmm.
There is the valuable time.
I'm a
Maybe.
nice guy. I will treat you nicely if you ask me a question.
Yeah. But you also remember in Indonesia? Oh, yes. This from Faiz. From Faiz, I think in the chat. We can go to the chat, guys. So, yes, I will read. In Indonesia, there is an innovator who created paving blocks made from waste materials, but they didn't receive any support, even though the project already obtained a certification of feasibility. The government didn't help and even seemed to make it difficult. Can such an innovation from an individual, not a big firm, be supported through green financing?
Absolutely, absolutely, and that actually is the essence of green financing, of sustainable finance, because what you just described there is a common problem, and that is, as I said at the onset, capital markets are meant to be efficient, but they're not, because there are many motivations that and incentivizations that determine capital flows. Governments have their own decision-making criteria, and it may or may not align with social good. Businesses similarly have their own criteria. So through access to financial capital to help support this company you're talking about, if there's like that green, financial market that we're talking about in Luxembourg, that's what we're talking about here, where these companies with great ideas that are going to make a huge impact can actually have access to capital through non-traditional sources. Now, is that easy? No, of course it's not. And disappointingly, I referenced it in New Zealand, probably 10 years, maybe it's more than 10 years ago now, or about 10 years ago. I was invited by the New Zealand government to join a panel to put forth a plan for developing a social finance market. And the social finance market was to help to provide sources of capital to companies just like this. So we met over the course of a couple months and drafted a huge document that was well received by certain quarters, but it was not adopted by the government. Why? Because the government didn't think there was sufficient political support to launch a social financial market, even though everyone said it was a great idea. And that would be the type of market that would fund such a company as this. So that's what we need to do. That's our job. Our job is to get the message out there, and in developing transparent, accessible of access to capital that then will help to provide, finance to deserving companies. Yes, that's what we're talking about here. But it's not easy. It's certainly not easy. Swasta, did that answer
Yes.
your Swasta? Is that okay?
Yes. Okay. Yes. I think it's there is problem with politics,
Yeah.
That we go with government, but
Yeah.
we don't know. It's kind of this, but we need to have like prosperity in communities, idealists from our deep heart, mindset, the good mindset to other. But we don't know all this. But
these fintech solutions,
okay,
they provide power to the people. If enough people got together and developed a social finance market through fintech platforms,
Mhm.
the government's no longer involved.
Yeah, should be.
Yeah,
Mm,
it should be. Yeah.
should be. Yeah. I think in Indonesia is also many program from Mr. Prabowo, the new president of Indonesia. You know, Mr. Jeffrey, Mr. Prabowo is from military background,
Yeah.
and yeah, I think he also think about the prosperous or wealthiness of our community.
Yeah.
But it's from food. Yeah, I don't know from. I mean, the financial. The financial technology is. I think it's like start up to go there to create this is can go with this thing. Yeah. Mm, yeah. How about you, Faiz? Can you speak on camera to Pak Jeffrey, Faiz, or with
Hello.
writing? Okay.
I'm sorry I cannot open the video
Oh, that's all
because
right.
some difficulty in yeah.
Pak Jeffrey. Yeah, that's okay. Okay. Please go, Faiz.
Yeah, so what make me question is that if individual, not a big firm, wants to get the capital to support their innovation, I don't know where they have to go in bank or what community to get access what we call green financing like that. So, I don't know where we go, where that individual should go if they want support capital to their innovation.
Yeah, and unfortunately, that's the challenge is there's not a lot of places to go at this point. You know, there's green bonds, which, you know, are for big projects. But at this point, there's very little financial resource available for small scale projects. So, you know, to answer your question succinctly, you know, the market is not well developed for sustainable finance at this point. But that's your challenge, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there, sorry, Dr. Jeffrey, is there any experience from, in New Zealand? I know that in maybe renewable energy, there is the GG Recharge, something like that, to waste management. But also there is a I think it's kind of financial technology, but in a waste.
Well, there's financial incentives from government, but there's no provision of direct financial resource, right? So there are a handful of organizations that will provide, you know, capital for worthy projects. You know, sustainability is a big focus for a handful of companies, but they have very limited resources, right? So they would be, maybe I'll make up a number, but it's probably close to the scale of, you know, maybe $10 million that they have to allocate, you know, on an annual basis, where the market or the demand is probably, you know, 100 times that amount, right?
So they
But I mean,
will
there are small, you know, small companies. Well, it can't be that small. There are companies that trade on, you know, trade as listed companies on exchanges. But you're talking about, you know, small projects that need to get up and running. Indonesia probably, I'm guessing, I don't have familiarity at this point with microfinancing. Microfinancing tends to be through you know, IMF type funding, through different government or NGO, I should say, entities. There are already different opportunities or provision of capital there, but there's no well-defined market that, you know, there's the need for this type of financial market. And there are instances of them around the world, but they're very limited.
Yeah. Yes, Dr. Jeffrey. But we mean that there is we still optimistic. Yeah. Someday,
Yeah.
this microfinance can go to, I mean, yeah, to make government, I think, to support this. What is it like? Yeah, the good for environment, specifically in financial investment in there. Yes, big challenge. I also, yeah, like in media, like newspaper, there is, I mean, there is some social, what is it, groups or volunteer to have a good idea to have how to make a good for environment, but it's like only small
Mm.
thing that yeah, actually they need to be supported by government and other stakeholders, I think. Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you,
you
Dr.
know,
Jeffrey.
Pak Swasta, you have to start small, and you have to remain optimistic, right? Yeah. And particularly what makes me optimistic is, the generation of students coming through university right now, like your students,
Yeah.
who are aware of the challenges and have an awareness of the solution, right? We talked today about solutions.
Yeah.
So it's the job of this current generation of academics and students to put together the solution towards the problem and have the optimism and the time horizon to know that they can make a difference. That's what's important.
Yes.
You get to be, well, certainly I'll speak for me. You get to be my age. It's like, yeah, I'm not going to worry about that so much anymore. No, that's not true. I still worry about it actually, because I
Okay.
worry about it for my children's benefit.
Uh, yeah. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Jeffrey. Another question, please. Still? Yeah. Okay. Oh yes, I mean Hifni as a master of ceremony just reminded me 1 minute again, sir. Okay. Okay, Dr. Jeffrey, I think that's
I thought we were going to have a question from Bu Hifni.
oh yeah.
Oh, here we go.
Oh no.
Nunu has a question. You got a question.
Any question, guys? Please, let's see.
But Nunu.
Oh, one. Yes. Oh, what's sorry? Mbak. Yeah. No. Where are you?
I can see.
Oh, you can see. Yes.
I can see.
Please, no. Yeah. Lovely. Please.
Okay, first of all, I wanted to say thank you, sir, for this amazing knowledge for today. So I wanted to ask you about the greenwashing because lately I've been interested with I have interest apa? Aku tertarik dengan greenwashing. So I will ask you about given that Indonesia's environmental data ecosystems is still developing and lacks of standardization, how can Fintech platform credibly verify and validate the green claims of the project or companies they finance, and what technological instruments or maybe frameworks that can be implemented to prevent systemic greenwashing and ensure that the deployed capital genuinely creates a positive environmental impact rather than merely serving as a marketing label. And I will send my question on the chat box so everyone can see it clearly.
No, that's a very
good.
that's a very sophisticated
Yes.
question, I would have to
Thank
say.
you, Nuno. Yeah.
So that's a very sophisticated question. I think what we do is we start with where we're at, which is what I spoke to with, kind of the state of ESG reporting. It's still not very much, almost entirely manually validated, right? So there's not a lot, it's changing, but there's not a lot of deep analysis, and there certainly isn't a lot of greenwashing analysis, right? And I will liken this to another common practice, which is I'll make this short. A common practice if a ESG or mutual fund has a mandate to invest in a certain category of stocks, environmentally friendly stocks, it's not uncommon there's a reporting date, right? A reporting date where they have to report all the holdings, and then their holdings on that point in time are measured against their mandate, i.e., environmentally friendly in stocks investing. Right? But what they can regularly do as common practice is once you get past the record date, they shift their whole portfolio, not all of it, but into environmentally unfriendly stocks, right? So they shift back and forth to adhere to mandate. Anyway, so through what I've talked about today, through real-time fintech monitoring through digital tracking, not manual tracking, digital tracking. So through digital tracking in real time, you're able to see, measure compliance, on a real-time basis, as opposed to a manual point in time, say, right? So that's where, and that's more complicated than it sounds, because there are many different, ways that one can greenwash. So there are many different measures that have to be undertaken, through digitization of compliance. And that's fundamentally what we're talking about here, is through digitization of compliance that will report if you're moving money around counter to what you're claiming to do. If your investments do not always adhere to your ESG mandates, and sending up signals then that will, indicate non-compliance. So that's what we're talking about. I mean, that's the channel that has to be developed further to monitor in real time ESG compliance. It's not technologically challenging. It's just to make sure that all the tools are in place and adopted to make sure that it happens. Did that answer your question a little bit? That's a very good question.
I think
Yes,
it's
very good.
answering my question over. I think it's answering the question, sir. But because honestly, I ask you the question because I think my question is crucial because the trust is the foundation of the entire green financial
Yeah, good.
ecosystem.
Yeah,
Now, without the ability to credibly verify claims, investor and the public will hesitate to channel their funds for real or falling into the trap of greenwashing. So that's the thing that make me concerned about the greenwashing.
You're absolutely right. And my favorite American president,
Oh,
my
Who?
favorite American president was
who is
named
he?
Ronald Reagan.
Oh, Ronald Reagan.
And Ronald Reagan was the president that spoke and came to a peace treaty with President Gorbachev from Russia.
Yeah, we got
From
Gorbachev,
Russia.
Union
And
Soviet.
President Reagan had a very famous saying, which is exactly Nunu what you said. President Reagan's saying was, "Trust, but always verify."
Yes.
So I trust the Russians,
No,
but not really.
not really. Yes. So your favorite is not Donald Trump?
No.
No, sorry, just kidding. Yeah. That's okay.
No.
But for the question, Dr. Jeffrey, I think you said that there is real time to to investigate, to observe the real green machine. Yeah, I mean for the financial technology, I think in information system, like my professor in Swinburne, he is expert in geographic information system. So that's exactly that when we see the environment, real environment, maybe for waste management, something like that, we can see what is the position of this, maybe the the governance of the waste management and the other. So I think now is in business, geographic information system is important. So
Yeah.
this from the technological aspect. Maybe it's like that, Dr. Jeffrey and Nuno.
Yeah,
You
no,
think
that's right. And there's
it will
many
help?
ways, there's many simple examples you could give on
Mm.
real-time compliance. So if you're an investment manager managing an ESG portfolio and you're claiming maybe you've got 20% of your holdings in a green compliant firm, a generator power that's generating natural, electricity, right? And you're claiming this particular company, this 20% of your whole holdings is ESG compliant. So therefore it satisfies your compliance. But how do you validate this, that this generator is ESG compliant regularly, full time? That's where you would have to make sure that there's all kinds of sensing devices that could signal you in a second if all of a sudden the company is dumping, pollutants in the river, right? Or discharging extra smoke into the atmosphere that would violate their ESG compliance. So it's got to be all linked together. And that's an example. The other example that would be very simple is if you have a ESG mandated mutual fund, right? That says to hold nothing but ESG compliant firms. But maybe they do, like I said, as a common practice, which is called window dressing. They only hold ESG compliant firms for particular points in their investment cycle at the beginning, middle, and end, or something like that. I just made that up, right? So, but if you had real-time tracking that looked at their portfolio, the second they shifted from an EV car manufacturer back to a fossil fuel production manufacturer, that would tell you in real time that they violated their mandate, right? So it's all doable, but the challenge is to get the political capital and the backing of investors like you and me, that are going to demand to have these type of ESG compliant companies that we can trust but verify, right? So that's what we have to do. And the more we move away from traditional financial intermediation and financial stock, broking to more populist, fintech, fintech is populist to a degree, right? So there can be, not always, but there can be many people involved. So the more people that are involved, the more believable, right? I would say.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Dr.
Very good
Jeffrey.
question. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Nuno. Okay, Professor Jeffrey, and also guys, the MPA student, I think the discussion is enough. And yes, we have a presentation and insightful presentation from Dr. Jeffrey about fintech and how they can be implemented in the real life with the what is it, like the policy and ESG that it needs to be considered of the community. And maybe also the key point is the trust, for the investor
Trust.
of this. Yeah.
But verify.
Yes. Okay. I'll give to now to the moderator of ceremony, Hifni. Thank you. Yes.
Okay, thank you to Pak Swasta Priyambada. And this is a certificate to Dr. Jeffrey Stengel, BA, PhD, CFA. Maybe the documentation team can screenshot this.
I gave to you the certificate. I mean, this is I as a representative of the MBA program from Professor Andriani Kusumawati for you. Thank you so much, Dr. Jeffrey Stengel.
Pak Swasta, thank you so much, and
Yes.
thank you for providing this opportunity. It was really my pleasure to see you, to
Yeah.
speak to your students, and
Yeah, thank you.
I appreciate this lovely certificate. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Matter of fact, Pak Swasta, if you can send me the PDF copy of that, I will hang it on my wall. How is that?
Okay, that's
Yeah.
okay. Yes, sure.
Sounds good.
It's
Okay.
PDF.
Okay.
Okay. I would
Thank
like
you.
to express my sincere gratitude to Mr. Swasta kindly leading this discussion this morning. And I would also thank to Dr. Jeffrey Stengel for the insightful presentation and valuable knowledge shared with us today. We truly hope that the discussion and ideas exchanged this morning will be meaningful and beneficial of all of us. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have now come to the end of the agenda. Before closing, on behalf of the organizing committee, please allow me to extend our sincere apologies for any mistakes or shortcomings throughout the event. We truly appreciate the presence of all our guests, especially Dr. Jeffrey Stengel, and every participant who has stayed with us until the end of the program. Once again, I'm Hifni Ruwaida. Thank you for your kind attention and participation. We hope to see you again in our upcoming events. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam
Terima kasih banyak.
Bye-bye, Dr. Winnie.
Bye-bye.
Sama-sama, you're welcome. Alhamdulillah, satu